Hello, my friends. Welcome and well met. W.R. Frady here. It's good to be back. Hate that I've kept you waiting this long, but I promise you, it'll be very well worth it. I have a few announcements to make. First of all, I have updated the map for Alderrhūn. So once that's prepared and ready to go, I will have a new printout for us to work with. But that being said, let's talk a moment about some of the elements that go into world building. World building in and of itself is not just creating a kingdom, throwing a city in there, or it's not even creating a continent and throwing all kinds of different locations about. I mean, yes, you can do that if you're wanting a short term, just something to come together. And it's not saying you can't do world building from a microscopic view and slowly expand it out into a macroscopic view. Matter of fact, that's entirely possible. It really just depends on the person building the world and the vision they have for it. Sometimes what starts off with a small story slowly expands into regional. It could slowly expand from a simple dungeon to a town, to a forest, to mountainsides, and then a greater kingdom at large, and that expands exponentially into a world beyond. So that in and of itself is another form of world building. However, when you're creating a massive world, even in that microscopic element, there comes a point where other factors come into play. Now, what factors am I talking about? Well, first of all, you got to think about what and who lives in that world or that region or that city or that dungeon. Why do they live there? How can they survive there? So there you start speaking of the ecology, the immediate environment, the ecology, the run of the rivers, the lay of the landscape. What makes this feasible? What makes this possible? So then when you start looking at the lay of the land, well, how does the land lay like that? You're going to start looking not only into geology and geography, my tongue got tied up, but geology and geography. You're going to look at socioeconomic dynamics. You're going to look at governmental structure. You're going to look at laws versus how those laws are implemented, how they are enforced, because without certain laws, all you've got is an anarchic society. And even your basic tribal structures have laws that things that are allowed and not allowed in the tribe. So it's not like even a barbarian culture didn't just thrive on chaos, or yet the Vikings would have never conquered so much of the known world, nor Genghis Khan and the Huns and conquer so much of the Eurasian continent. So in looking at that, you do have certain structures you have to have in place. But for today, the structure I want to talk about is the effect of climatology on the geological structure. You see, the whole world, even our own real world, has different bands of climate that affect the cultures, the economics, the ecology of those lands. And not only that, on who and what lives there and how they're able to thrive and survive. So the Lord of the Rings even expressed this in the way that the world from Beleriand all the way down to Mordor was explained. This being said, Alderrhūn, Aerith, the Forgotten Realms, Dragonlance, no believable fantasy world that is truly immersive is shy on these things, because that is an attention to detail that drives how everyone thrives and survives, or whether they're possibly able to survive or thrive. There are certain fantasy worlds out there that go completely against those laws, and I'm not going to name them, but for me, it kills the believability, because in the sense, especially being a low or no magic realm, those things cannot thrive, and it makes no sense in how things do. But hey, to each their own. I'm not going to knock on it or knock on anybody else's work. It's the fact that there's a different approach to what makes a good believable fantasy. And it starts with having a good believable world that is self-sustaining enough to build life and keep life. Anyway, that being said, let's move over to what I'm talking about and bring it to the map that I've got working on right now, which is, you've seen this map before, but we're going to work on the climatology bands this time. Without further ado, let's take this to the map. All right, now I'm going to take and use this pen, this blue here, because it's different from the violet, it's different from the red, to gauge and border out these approximate climate areas. For example, we know that this is the bitter frost region. This is going to be your Arctic tundra type of area. We're just going to do a general climatology. We're going to start here at this corner. We're just going to come right across the top of the Ash Crown Mountains. We're just going to take this in like it is, because these mountains are going to make a huge difference. And then we're going to bring this on out, and we're going to end that one off right there. Okay. So we're going to do this right here. Now granted, those mountains, these upper sections of the mountains, of the Sleeping Dragon Mountains, are going to be in that Arctic feel as well. So this is going to be the Arctic band. Actually, you know what might not be a bad idea? Let's get a different color of blue. We're going to take this and we're going to turn this into the subarctic. Actually, we're just going to take this one and turn it into the subarctic area. So, again, now, this is the subarctic tundra. So, again, these spars right here, this is going to have like very scrubby. What little bit of vegetation can thrive there is going to be like what you'd see toward the Arctic or in the upper parts of Russia or northern Canada, those kind of areas. So this right here is the subarctic. We're going to start right here. I'm going to just circle this around because we're not trying to make perfect borders. We're just trying to divide off what Arctic bands or what climate bands are where. And we're going to circle this around here. Again, this that I'm doing is completely changing the game of what ecologies and what creatures can live there, how harsh that land is going to be, what kind of people are going to have to be able to thrive and survive in those areas, what's going to make the difference here as opposed to here in cultures and needs, in housing and warmth. So these factors play heavily in the design of a living, breathing fantasy world. Here's what we need to do. Go ahead and do this. I'm going to take this and we're going to bring this around this way, because that is, like I said, we're not doing it perfectly. We're just laying out. There's those bands. That's what those are. So this is Arctic, subarctic. Now we're going to get into the continental and oceanic. So with oceanic, this time we're going to pull out that color. I think I already used that color. Yes, I did. Never mind. Let's try that again. Oh, no, I didn't. Good. All right. So this is going to be the continental. And this is going to be the oceanic. Oceanic is probably going to be more rampant from here. Get up here, I don't want to run it down on my map. So we're going to run this one out here because it's going to have a pretty good effect with the prevailing winds. And this climatology here. Yeah, we're going to go right here with it. We're going to take it down to where it meets this. Now, just going to give a good measure on this. That's not saying that this is going to stay the way it is. As I build and as I study how everything flows in here, like, okay, this right here could change simply because the prevailing winds are going to come in. It's going to hit these mountains. It's going to hit this mountains and all this. So the prevailing winds are going to mainly be channeled right in through the cradle of the winds. That being said, this could actually change and end up becoming more focused in this way because of how the land, the winds, and such are directed based on the landscape and layout of the continent. So that's going to play into a factor which I'm going to have to check in on again with the climatology. You have to look at the prevailing winds, on what winds are going to be blowing in from where, because that's also going to create your weather patterns for the fantasy world you're building. So in order to look at that, that's going to make a big determinant on how that affects this rough sketch of the climate bands, so that, or these climate regions, so that I can create this more accurately and develop the right kind of ecology to build on and know how things are going to be able to operate here. Like naturally, this is going to be more balmy, more sea breeze. This might be cold balmy like the Northwest. This might be California like. This down here might be like it is down toward the Mexican border. That's just giving a good rough example. Or if you want to look at it in the European terms, this is going to be like what you would see up in the Scandinavian regions, the British Isles. This would be like in the France. This would go on down, going down towards, heading down towards the lower end of the continent and the Mediterranean and so forth. So giving you an idea of what and where things are going to do and how they're going to play out accordingly. So let's continue this. We're going to bring this on down and bring this oceanic climate on down, and we're going to bring it even closer. Whoops. Well, we're going to do this right here. Like I said, this is a rough sketch, and that's also right there. Going to use this as a quick lesson. This is why I'm not drawing on this down here. This, I can replace this. Where I botched at right there, and I'm going to say, yes, I botched at. But that's the beauty of it. I can take this and take this off, replace this part, redo it, fix it. Well, even when I redo this, when I get this done, it's going to be redone. Now, once it's all said and done, I'm going to have digital versions of my climatology map. I'm going to have digital versions of the weather patterns. I'm going to have the flora and fauna areas and zones. World building is not a small task, but it's also a very rewarding and fun task if you're willing to take it up and do it. Anyway, let's take this on out to here. All right. With that being said, now we have 2 of the major climate zones. So now we're going to go from there. Let's move these 2 aside so we don't. Yep. Let's. Okay. Let me check and make sure my marks are even. Okay, yeah, that's the one. All right, wanted to make sure. Yeah, good. Now, because we're going to hit the Mediterranean, well, we're going to hit the continental first. So we're going to take this real deep dark green here, and we're going to make this continental right here like this. Now, the reason I'm not going into mountains is if anybody who lives near mountains knows that mountains can have, while they may be in a specific climate region, mountains are often, especially depending on their elevation, can be independent climate regions of their own because the altitude changes that. Back to this, we're going to take this out here. As it goes toward Anakia and the lands where basically there's the cradle of civilization and Earth. Okay, we're going to take this, we're going to go down here. Good, I thought I about got into my main map. Yeah, we're going to go down here like this. Alright, now this, I'm going to wrap this around here. Okay, right there, this climate region is continental because it's going to be continental. You're going to kind of look at what you would expect in western North Carolina, and depending on where you're watching from, you will see the climate ties. You're going to see it in western North Carolina, to Tennessee, to Kentucky. In Europe, you may see that as you travel east from into like Germany and I don't want to say France, but basically if you travel east into Germany, Austria, Yugoslavia, the Czech Republic, and those areas, and you're going in that route, that's what you're looking at. Turkey, Romania. Well, Romania would probably have more of a Mediterranean in some areas, but yeah, it's still going to have that kind of a climatology, that continental climatology, because you got hot, humid summers, but then you got the steady cold winters. You know, it's going to be its own. It's its own entity. I guess the best way I can explain it is it's what you're used to in temperate zones, where you're likely to have temperate rainforests and so forth. So those areas, that is what's going to be prevailing in this zone. Down here, now this area I said was going to have the Mediterranean, especially due to this. So let's take this and we're going to go to this brighter green for this Mediterranean area. So we're going to take this and we're going to bring this. Yeah, we're going to bring that right in here. touching it again. But that's the beauty, like I said again, that's the beauty of it. There's no winds here. There's going to be very little winds here, so that Mediterranean virus is going to go back in here a little ways, because you've got this big old, this massive mountain range and that is surrounding these dale areas. That is going to be blocking all the sea breezes. So it's going to lock this into the Mediterranean environment that's pretty much here, predominant in this location. So let's get that. Now we're going to go back over here. And we're going to hit it right here immediately. Alright. Now this is our Mediterranean environment. Which means also that we need to go ahead and look at the arid coast region here is going to still have some of that oceanic and marine type of feel to it. So we're going to bring this back over here. I'm going to touch up on some of these. Right, so we're going to go ahead and bring that in here. Then you're going to start having more of the continental and desert type regions. So big old yellow to signify that climate area. More arid regions, which I'm going to double that Mediterranean with that, because the arid coast region is kind of like that region that touches the Sahara and some of the Middle Eastern areas, and even some of the Grecian, and so you got that Mediterranean, but yet at the same time you've got enough desert and arid temperatures to change up what's going on here with this. Again, there's a reason this is called the arid coast region. There's not as much rainfall. So we're going to do that right there. Okay, now, here we go. And then we're going to cycle this around here. And I know that I'm kind of like rushing through this, but it's not because I'm trying to shortcut it. It's because I'm making a general overview of the area that I'm building. There we go. All right, now those are my current climate bands on this. You got the Arctic, you got the subarctic, you've got the oceanic, Mediterranean, or oceanic and marine. You got the Mediterranean, you got the continental, you've got the arid regions, and so forth, and and such. So we've got a generic basic layout of the climatology. Does that mean that's going to stay that way? No, but that gives me a good general layout of what I see and how things are going to work. Once I really start working with the prevailing winds and see how the climate, how the meteorology and the weather is going to run through here, that's going to possibly blend up and change some of this just a bit. You might see some of this drift down more this way and this way, since There are mountains that are channeling some of that down here, and then you're going to have this warm, balmy area down here that's going to be like basically the areas surrounding the Mediterranean. Now, giving it the name, the Mediterranean environment, let's just state the obvious. Anyway, but no, this is an important step in designing world building, or world design and world building. So it's not something you can skimp out on, especially if you're trying to create something sustainable and you're trying to do it for more than just maybe a hobby, maybe or you're just trying to do it for the next game you're trying to play or whatnot. But if you're wanting something that you're trying to build for storytelling or for a more of a professional basis, yes, this is something that you have to take into factor. It's like all those classes you thought would never matter in school, here they are. So, basically social studies, geography, earth science, and stuff like that, sociology, economics, all those things you thought didn't matter, here they are. All right, I'd like to thank you for joining me as I was discussing the climatology and the weather dynamics that are involved in building a fantasy world, in this case, the world of Alderrhūn and the continent of Xhændora. As always, I appreciate each and every one of you for joining me in this journey and for being a special part of what and why I do what I do. I can't wait to share this world with you overall and show you the new updates on the map. The map has changed. That map will soon be one of the steps along the way. I do have a new map of Xhændora and the known world that has expanded out to include the area that was cut off right there near the lower eastern portion, or the lower western portion of the map. And in doing so and keeping the proportions, it has extended up and down just slightly. To give you an example, at one time I said that Xhændora is roughly the size of continental Europe. I want to reiterate on that it is. It's just slightly bigger than continental Europe, east to west by about 300, north to south by about 400 miles. So that gives you an idea of the size of Xhændora, what the layout is going to be. And that being said, again, I want to thank you for joining me. I hope I can get back on here soon. I am still building the historical timeline. I am locked in the Middle Ages now, which this can be another video for another time, but history is not one of those things that you can just say, well, this happened because I said so. If you look at our own history is a series of cause and effect. Any believable history is a series of cause and effect that branches and butterflies out like a river branching into tributaries that all lead to specific events in different locations at different times. And so that is something that you have to take into consideration when building a history, writing legends and stuff, and how it affects the overall scheme. Sometimes it's best to look at where you want the history to go, where it started, and kind of go in between backwards to forwards and forward to back and meet in the middle so that you can create a consistent set of events. But again, that being said, that is that is an idea, a topic for another day, another time. Until then, thank you again for joining me. I appreciate you. I love each and every one of you, and I'm glad to have you along with my journey. For now, I have to bounce. Again, make sure you check out Stormthorn on Spotify. If you like music that is soothing, good atmospheric, whether it's reading, writing, studying, role-playing games, whatever it is you want to use it for, it's good to use, man. And I will talk to you here soon. Thank you. Have a good day, and we will see you next time. WRF Radio out.